What is up, world? It's your boy Ton, and you are listening to the Wonton Wealth Podcast. Here, I'm going to unravel anything and everything commercial real estate related. And more importantly, we're going to add abundant value. So if you're ready, buckle up your eardrums. All right. Today I got a badass guest for you guys. His name is Clay Lehman. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah, nailed it.
Clay has been in business for roughly 20 years or so. He just shared with me. But for the audience, Clay, could you give us a little background of who you are,
Sure.
what you're doing now, and how that kind of ties into either business or real estate?
Yeah, man, you got it. Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here. My background starts in accounting. That's what I went to school for. I still have my CPA license, although don't ask me tax questions. That's a big mistake. Got into real estate about 20 years ago. Have gone through a number of different iterations of my real estate career. Started with Pulte Homes, so production building. Then I went to work for a mortgage lender managing their foreclosed properties. From there, I started my own asset management company in 2009 when the world was on fire. Started my real estate brokerage shortly after that. Then into property management, most recently into title. Started a title business in 2022. And then I need to stop referring to that as most recent because the most recent is now getting into consulting and coaching, helping real estate professionals learn how to scale their businesses, to do it in a manner that doesn't set their whole world on fire and ruin their lives, because I was there, where I was just getting completely burnt out, but have learned how to kind of have both. I do, it's a lot of work and it's still work, but it can be enjoyable and you can set it up to take breaks and not have your business collapse.
Sure. Thank you for that. So a colorful background, obviously, and you were in it, during, like, as you said, when the world was on fire during the global financial crisis. So
Exactly.
a lot of things from that, you mentioned the real estate, you mentioned asset management, and then you started your own brokerage. So what within that time frame there, how did it lead you into what you're doing now in the consulting and the coaching role?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I think one thing was doing real estate in that time, practicing real estate in that time was very challenging. And so there were a lot of lessons learned. One of the things that if you have if you're a realtor and you have the opportunity to manage foreclosed houses, it is a master class in real estate problem solving because you just run into so many different problems. I will not say that I've seen it all, but coming out of managing foreclosed properties, both as an asset manager and then also as a listing agent, you get exposure to managing repairs, managing evictions, managing title issues, managing mold, houses with mold, houses with holes in the roof. I had a house that had somebody had taken up all the subflooring, so the house was nothing but the floor joists. You just have all kinds of interesting stuff you're into, and then you're also managing people because you're working with sometimes the borrower is still in the house, then you're working with asset managers. So all that to say, a lot of exposure to the different things you can run into in real estate, and then coming out of that, I didn't know anything about business development. I think that's where a lot of us that get into real estate, we learn about how to fill out a contract and how many square feet are in an acre, but we don't ever really learn how do I get a client. And I've sort of stumbled through so many different ways of doing it wrong, and have landed on a couple that have really worked out. My biggest sort of success was in scaling my property management business and then selling that in 2022. So I think that's kind of what all of that stuff has sort of melded together and given me the opportunity to be a resource for agents that are still figuring things out.
Is it primarily only for agents, or is it also, other property managers
Yeah,
or investors, et cetera?
you nailed it. I try to use the term real estate professionals because I love to serve agents, but also property managers, title. We work with some lenders that are working to scale their businesses, and really, I mean, I work with I don't really have a lot of expertise in retail manufacturing, but like if it's service based, I can pretty much help somebody figure out how to grow the business.
Got it. So your typical avatar is someone in that real estate realm that has a problem of figuring out how to get more leads, developing their own business, things like that. Yes?
That's the way I describe my ideal client is somebody that's been in business for like 3 to 5 years. They're had enough success to do it full time, but they've hit a ceiling where they're working hard but not growing. And I mean, I think we all experience that because you get into it, you start mining your sphere for work. And if you're good, you'll be successful and they'll start referring you to people, but that can only take you so far. You can't scale that to like, I mean, you can have a nice life doing that, but if you really want to scale your business, you've got to figure out how to grow beyond just your sphere and those referrals, and that's who I help.
Okay. Gotcha. So in your typical clientele, what would you say their biggest bottleneck is?
So there's two sides of the bottleneck. So on the scaling side, it's a lack of strategy. We as entrepreneurs are very confident people, or at least we fake being very. You got to be really confident in your own ability to say, "I'm going to do it myself." And how that manifests in different areas of your business is you'll say, "Oh, marketing, I'm going to do that myself." And then and I'm not saying you have to hire somebody, but a lot of times we don't have the expertise to create a strategy. What ends up happening is you see what an agent over there is doing and an agent over here is doing, and that person's having success. So I'm going to try and do those things, but there's no coherent strategy behind it. And then the other thing that becomes the bottleneck on the like sort of what I would call operational excellence side is just the inability to delegate, whether that's because there's no one to delegate to, or more common, no one's going to do it as well as I can do it, so I'm not going to delegate it. And that's a huge mistake. And I'm going to plug one of my favorite books is Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. I would encourage anybody and everybody to read it. One of the things that he says in there is if you're a full-time service business, I guarantee you could hire an admin tomorrow and have them busy. And a lot of the agents I work with, that's true. And I mean, like, I deal with it today. I don't even want to just say, oh, well, I've been there. I get it. Whenever you have to take the time to train someone and to document your process, and that's time and it's a cost, but you got to switch your brain from thinking of it as a cost and start thinking of it as an investment. You're investing in your own personal freedom. I one day woke up and I said, I've built my own prison, referring to my job, my business that really was a job. So I like to help people go from self-employed to being like a real true business owner, founder, growth specialist.
I love that. You mentioned in the bottleneck piece that a lot of people lack the strategy. So when a client comes to you, how do you decide whether or not their business needs a better strategy or better systems or better people first? And so like, what is your diagnostic process in like the first, call it week or 90 days or whatever?
That is an awesome, insightful question. And so I'm going to give you the short answer, which won't provide much value for anyone, but then I want to give a longer answer that hopefully will provide value. And that is that, I've developed some tools that I can run on that agent just based on their name and their geography to sort of assess their marketing profile. And then we obviously have a call with them. That's some proprietary stuff I've built, but I'm happy to share exactly what I'm doing so that people can do it to them, like for themselves. So what we're looking at is, the first thing we're going to look at is, your kind of digital footprint. So you can effectively think of it as Googling yourself, kind of put yourself in the shoes of your ideal client. How are they going to see you first? And keeping in mind that, and especially in the real estate realm, people are online for 2 to 3 weeks before they reach out to a realtor or lender or any other professional doing their own research. So that means they're on Zillow, they're on Realtor, they're on Homes.com, they're on Redfin. So the first place I tell people to look is, how do you look on Zillow, Realtor? Meaning, how is your profile? Because on each of those sites, on those portals, they give you a free profile that you can fill in. And I like to use an analogy of like, let's say you go to your downtown square or you go to the mall and you have 3 or 4 stores that sell very similar products, and one is has nice mannequins that are dressed nicely and lit nicely, and the sign's bright, and it looks like it's modern and updated. And then you look to your left, and then there's another one where there's cobwebs, and it's not even claimed, and it doesn't even have a "I'm open" sign. Well, that's what happens when somebody comes on Realtor and your profile says "not yet claimed." It's like, well, are they in business? So that's an easy one and that's true for whether that's real estate professionals or anybody else. And speaking of, to make it even more broad, do you have a Google business profile? So the world is changing. The world of search is changing. People are now using AI to find services and people. You're starting to see realtors post online, "Oh man, I just got my first listing because somebody found me on ChatGPT." So the world of search is changing, but it's still built on the back of Google. So, and not only that, like I definitely, as much as I love AI and I'm, have a focus on that future, SEO and Google search is not going away. It's just shifting a little bit. So with that said, your Google business profile is still a very critical part of your business. So that's one of the things we're going to look at is, do they have a Google business profile? Are they updating it regularly with new pictures and new information? And then are they cultivating reviews on their Google business profile? Because once again, this is something in real estate. Definitely people are on Zillow and people are on Realtor and people are on Homes. So it's good to have reviews there, but people still look on Google to see what your reviews are. And not only that, one of the big advantages of having a Google business profile, if you're gathering reviews on Zillow and Realtor, that's a good thing, but you can only get reviews from people who have a direct connection to you, to a transaction. They can go on and say, "Yeah, you sold me 123 Main Street." Well, the advantage of Google Business Profile is anyone can give you a review. Now, I want to make sure that I finish the thought. I'm not advocating fake reviews or, just getting all your best friends to review you. But if you're in real estate for any amount of time, on a weekly basis, you probably get, "Hey, I know we're not doing any work together right now, but could you answer a question for me?" And those are ideal people to say, and now to be clear, answer their question. Don't say, "Oh yeah, I'll answer it," only if you answer the question, but then at the end you say, "Hey, I hope that was helpful. What would be really helpful for me is if you would go on my Google business profile and give me a review." Now, they're going to probably say yes. You need to have a templated email with the link to your Google business profile ready to send to them immediately. Because that's the other thing you have to do is, if you want a human being to do something, make it as easy for them to do it as possible, because we're lazy creatures. So that's, so we're looking at your portals, we're looking at your Google business profile, and then another kind of easy lift for your audience, and just raise your hand if you're like, "Dude, shut up." But the next thing we're looking at is, how are you utilizing your social media profiles and bios? That's a really overlooked opportunity. So when you're posting social media, for your social media, every post should have 3 components: a goal. What am I trying to get someone to do by looking at this post? It should be value based, right? It should be value for your ideal client, and it should have a call to action. And so one of the things you want people to do when they're looking at your social media is you want them to click on your name to see your profile. So like Facebook and LinkedIn are like the best examples of this. You have the opportunity to put a profile picture, but then you also have a banner. That banner should be a digital billboard. And as one of my mentors says, remember that a billboard's meant to be read at 70 miles an hour. So make it, an image of you, like a quick, like for me, business strategy. And then the other nice thing, and this is in LinkedIn, you can't make it clickable, like to take somebody to a URL, but if you encourage them to click your picture, it'll bring up the caption, and the caption can have a link in it. So like my profile right now, it doesn't, because I'm running a specific thing, but my profile picture, or my banner picture, typically has "click here." And again, when they click, it just opens the image, but it also opens the caption, and then there's a link for whatever I want them to do right there. So that's another thing that they could do that's a tremendous lift for their business strategy.
Love that. That's it's pretty much how you market yourself on all these free platforms, right? On
Exactly.
social media and whatnot. But okay. Now, if we're looking at the type of teams or individuals that are going to you as a consultant / a coach, I'm going to assume, they're, again, when you say your avatar is someone who's in business for 3 to 5 years, I'm going to assume that those individuals have somewhat of a small team.
They can.
So, or maybe they're just by themselves and they haven't delegated,
Yeah,
right?
it runs the gamut, but yeah, that's right.
Sure. So what are, let's say, the core systems that every high performing team should have that's already in place or should be in place and or should be automated?
Okay, so there's one primary one that no one likes, myself included, and that's the process around the upkeep of your CRM. Your CRM is the heartbeat of your business, and it needs to, you know, it needs to curate your contacts, it needs to cultivate your contacts, and it needs to convert your contacts. So, but it's only as good as our inputs to it, and that's why I say I'm right. I'm in my glass house throwing stones real hard right now because it's just something that's real easy to let slip away. But I mean, if you think about it, like that's the thing that what. So the thing that makes you successful is not motivation. It's discipline. And the thing that makes you disciplined, or shouldn't say makes you disciplined, but is disciplined when you're not, are your systems. And so the CRM is the backbone. And so a lot of times, the thing that I'll come in and see is everybody has a CRM. I have a CRM. Okay, which one do you have? And this is one of my favorites is, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of and you're like, okay, that's, we're not off to a great start. But, and then it's how frequently do you engage with it? Well, when I remember to or whatever. And you nailed it when you said automation. So one of the things that we all suffer from is that whole shiny object syndrome where like you see, and especially in the age of AI, bro, I need blinders. I need some blinders because it's everywhere. But one of the shiny objects right now is automation. And do I need Zapier or do I need, Make or N8N or dude, before you look at any of that, look at your CRM, man. Those things are chock full of automations. And so one of the exercises that we go through with our clients, but again, not to make it about me, what I would encourage your audience to do is go through and do a full-on optimization of their CRM. And to me, an optimization starts with making sure all of your information is in there correctly, your correct name or team name, your phone numbers as they're going to appear across the internet, because you want your phone number, you want your NAP to be consistent, your name, address, and phone number consistent across all of the interwebs. So you want to make sure you have all that in there, that you have any of your programs are in there, all that. Then you want to make sure your customers, their information is in there and segmented because that's going to make your CRM that much more effective. You want to build drip campaigns for each one of your customer segments so that you're not the one constantly following up. And then you want to take advantage of any automations. And here's the great news. It's never been easier to do this because all of these large language models, if you're in like a pretty broadly known CRM, and even if you're not, it probably, Chat or Gemini or Claude, you could just say, hey, I use Lofty and I need your help implementing. Can you walk me through an implementation process? And it'll do it. It'll say to you, okay, go here and find where to put this, that. It'll walk you right through everything that you need to do. So, but that's the big one is just optimizing your CRM to take advantage of everything it can do for you.
Love that. So I have to ask,
Mm-hmm.
what CRM are you using?
What's the name? No, I'm just kidding. So I'm in Go High Level. So we're
Love it.
using Go High Level for our website. Go High Level, it's like a double-edged sword. It's an amazing tool. I almost said CRM, but it's such a broader tool than a CRM. That's the positive side of the sword. But the side that cuts you in half is it's like trying to launch a rocket ship. So, but the beauty of GHL is that you can get snapshots, which are basically like out of the box solutions. And so we're still in the process of kind of finishing it up, but we're building a snapshot that will support our clients and kind of give them, website, CRM, drip campaigns, it's really broad. It's not, there's not even a list to get on for a wait because I don't know when we're going to be able to launch it. But if anyone's interested in Go High Level, highly encourage you checking it out. You just probably also want to look for someone to help you implement it and not just try to do it yourself. If I can take a minute on that, like that's the thing that the biggest, well, I wouldn't say it's the biggest mistake, but the mistake I repeated the most in my career was going off. And since you set the precedent of letting some curse words go here, so going off half-assed after what looks like the best CRM ever, cutting a check to the company. So it's not even like I'm on a free trial. I'm like, here is $1,000 for access to your amazing tool. That would then gather dust until 6 months later when I'm like, oh, I purchased that thing, and I'm paying for it on a monthly. I should really, and then finally saying, you know what, cancel. And I did that 3 times. And one of the things, so the most success I've had with the CRM, going back to that property management business, I bought the whatever, signed up for the CRM, say day one, and then 6 months later hadn't done anything with it. So then I bought an implementation package. This was well before AI. I bought an implementation package, which then also sat for 6 months before I finally said, I need to hire somebody. And I hired somebody to implement it, and it paid for itself, over and over again. And to be clear, it's not a service I offer. I'm not pitching this as you need to hire me to do an implementation. I'm just saying the lesson I learned was, for something as critically important to your business as your CRM, it doesn't hurt to spend a couple hundred or even a couple $1,000s to get it set up correctly.
Love that. Is there anything else that's in your tech stack or any previous CRMs that you use that you would still kind of recommend outside
Yeah,
of Go High Level?
absolutely. So if you are in the property management space, I was on Lead Simple, and it's an amazing CRM. And it actually they've added tons of components to it. By the time I sold, our CRM was in it, but then also all of our kind of automations were running through what they've built out. So for a property manager, it's incredible. In terms of what I tell people about what CRM is the best for them, it's the one you're going to use. So if that means it's a whiteboard in your office, but you're going to use it, then don't feel any sort of shame that you didn't pay for some humongously complicated one. But if you're going to use a tremendously complicated one, they're very powerful. One of my friends who I informally do work for from time to time, he's in Follow Up Boss and uses all the AI tools in there. They're mind blowing what it can do for you in terms of nurturing leads without any involvement. So he told me, like, he'll have leads that'll be in there for months and months and months, constantly being nurtured by the AI, and then they get handed over once they reach a certain, like, their language starts to change. The AI kind of picks up on these people are ready to move forward, and then it moves over to them. So, it runs the gamut, but it doesn't matter how fancy or how good it is. If you're not going to use it, then don't waste your money.
Awesome. Well, outside of having a CRM that kind of keeps everything organized for you, and obviously your leads, your contacts, etc., outside of that, there's a component of having systems and procedures within your business, right? If you had to implement just, let's say, 3 SOPs that would stop 80% of all the operational bullshit or chaos that's within a real estate team, what would those be, and what do they contain?
Yeah, so it would depend. Not to be dodgy, but I'm also trying to think through it because I don't know that I've like ranked them. It depends a little bit on your situation. I'd probably just like when I work with, I evaluate what sucks up the most of your time. The other thing is what drains your energy, and not to beat it to death, but that was something I learned out of Buy Back Your Time. Was he talks about when you sit down to document your processes and sort of prioritize what are you going to delegate. He says, don't just look at the time it takes, but what is it that sucks energy out of you and what is it that gives energy to you? And so you have to look at that. But I would think, like, if you're a high volume listing agent, then it's going to be that whole, probably it's going to be the pre-listing meeting, like setup, getting ready for that pre-listing appointment. Because, if you think through, like, okay, if I'm going to close this many, then that means I need to have this many listings, then I have to have this many meetings, and I have to have, well, you're going to be doing a lot of meetings. So having that pre-meeting prep process. The other thing that's really nice about that is there's a ton of AI and automation tools that you can use. One of my favorite tools right now is Google Gemini, and within it, there's a component called deep research. So if you're going into a neighborhood you've never worked in before, run a quick deep research document on it. And I say quick, it'll take about 15 minutes, which is long or 5 to 15 minutes, which is long for an AI search, but it'll give you 30, 35 pages of information on whatever it is you're researching. So you could build you could have your whole process of, okay, when I go to meet with somebody, I'm going to look at their LinkedIn to kind of get an idea of what they do and how I might build rapport. And I'm going to pull their, property card off of the property appraisers. And then I'm going to look at it for this information. And so there's all this stuff that you could then just set up either like a custom GPT or even just some prompts that you could have a team member pull all of that together for you. If you're really feeling froggy, you build it on like a Make or Zapier or whatever, where it does it for you and then presents it to you just prior to the meeting. There's also some cool stuff you can do that, if you wanted to send something to your to the person you're meeting with, you can make, using Google Notebook LM, you can pull in information, about their house, their neighborhood, all of that. And there's a function within Google Notebook LM where you can create a podcast based on the information you've put into the notebook. So how cool would it be if you're like, hey, I'm looking forward to meeting you on Monday. Here's a podcast I put together for you. And I'm not don't pretend it's not AI. I want forward thinking people working for me. So you'd be like, as an agency, we like to balance the, old fashioned relationship that you're getting by us having this conversation with making sure we're taking advantage of all the tech to sell your house for the most, blah, blah, the whole pitch. But you can send them a podcast that's, hey, to sell the house at 123 Main Street, these are the things that need to happen these days. And this is the type of buyer. And it sounds like you've got two professional podcasters discussing this person's house. It's like, how are they not going to be blown away by that? So there's just all these cool things. And I'm sorry, I went away from your question of the top 2 or 3 things. So that would be one, is meeting prep, or the things that are just sucking the life out of you. The other thing would be transaction kind of coordination. And then the most important in my mind is post-closing. And there's just a small segment of that I've already talked about that, is so critical. And that is cultivating your reviews, your testimonials, and your case studies. That's one thing that people, I know I need to get more reviews. I always forget to ask or whatever. Yeah, don't forget, put it in your CRM to drip them. And people don't get, you think, I don't want to bother them by asking. Here's what you do. Don't focus solely on, hey, I'd like a review. Why don't you, let's say it was somebody that bought a home with you. So on your first email where you're asking for them to review you, why don't you throw in there, hey, did you go ahead and change over your homestead exemption? Here's how you do that. Oh, by the way, would you mind giving me a review? And then the next one be, did you get your kids registered for school yet? Here's the form that you're going to fill out. And oh, by the way, would you also send me a review? We get so focused on what we want and need and us. It's not because we're self-centered. It's just because that's how our brain is centered to function. Focus on the value you can bring to your client while you're asking for something like a review. But that would be one that is automate that crap, because you should ask for it at the table. You should ask for it in person. You should ask for it on phone calls, but you should also have that loop going to them to remind them to give it, because they're going to say yes, and then they're going to forget. You got to get that link in front of them over and over again.
Love that. All right, guys, tune in again next week to hear the second part of my conversation with Clay Lehman. And that's a wrap. If you've made it this far, that means you've listened to the entire episode, so thank you. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening from. And if you've learned something or found it useful, share it with one of your homies. And if you want to get in touch with me, I'm pretty active on IG. My handle is pro_TANH. Reach out, let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, or what you want to hear about in the future. I'm here to tailor this to you. Until next time.